Welcome to the Spunky Spirit Podcast. I'm your host, psychic medium Carrie Muggs. This is where we learn all things spirit, everything from spiritual gifts, awakenings, ghosts, aliens, and starseeds. Nothing is untouchable, but always fun and spunky. I am honored to be on this spiritual journey with you, so make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Hello, and welcome to Spunky Spirit Podcast. Today, we are going to talk about one of my favorite things is Christmas. Christmas. I have loved Christmas forever, and it could be because my birthday is in December, but I just have always felt this, I don't know, just this every Christmas spirit. I felt the Christmas spirit. And that's kind of what I want to talk about in this episode is I know sometimes the Christmas or the holidays can be hard for some people, especially when people have lost loved ones, or especially when money's tight, or when you get in the consumer part of it, and watching families get together and you having some lost loved ones, it can be a difficult time. And I've always just kind of, I don't know, just felt this Christmas spirit, almost like there's just something about it that's amazing and beautiful. And if you look past all of that kind of stuff, I kind of even wonder too, I've even wondered if Christmas spirit, not necessarily Santa Claus, but just if there's how there's archangels or things like that, if there's actually a spirit that revolves around Christmas. So this episode is going to be kind of a little bit of talking about the Christmas spirit, as in a spirit type thing. And I will talk about Santa Claus and things like that and where they came from, because I think it all kind of combines, and it's all how it was created. And maybe at the beginning of all of this, a Christmas spirit, or even Saint, the saint that it was named after, Saint Nicholas, the Bishop of Myra, maybe because there are different saints there are the saints that the Catholics talk about or believe in too. And I can't help believe that there is some truth to this. And I love it. And I remember when I was little, one of the very first times my family was not very religious. We didn't, it was all about Santa and when I was growing up, but my mom did tell me, at one time, probably when I was 8 or 9 years old, about Jesus and how it revolves around Jesus. And I remember that very first Christmas morning I found out that it revolved around Jesus. I woke up super early, or ran out in my backyard in my bare feet and looked up at the stars and said, "Happy birthday, Jesus." I just always have thought that there's something special about Christmas. So I'm going to give you a little bit of my research, a little bit of my own stories, and you can kind of make that up you can kind of decide for yourself, just like all of these podcasts. I'll tell you what my experience is, what I've researched, and you can make the decision yourself. So the Christmas spirit, or the spirit of Christmas, when I looked at the definition, it said this. It said, the spirit of Christmas is in the togetherness. It's in the thought to which you put into thinking about others. It's a selfless time where we forgive, take stock of what's important, and become better versions of ourselves. In general, we're encouraged to be joyful, charitable, generous, kind, and forgive. And I think that in a whole, it's not even the togetherness. I think the togetherness is great, but I think that in general, we are encouraged to be joyful, charitable, generous, and kind. I think sometimes, now with the consumerism and everything, some of that gets lost. And we're so into, got to get the gifts, got to do this. And it's more of a checklist. And so we forget that to be joyful and charitable and generous and kind. And it also says forgive, but I kind of feel like forgiveness is something else. Forgiveness is something that you work on, and it's a process inside of you. It doesn't really have anything to do with the Christmas spirit, but you can, feel the Christmas spirit so strong sometimes that it opens up your heart for forgiveness. So now I do know, as a mother of little kids, most of the time, I used to have little kids, not anymore, but I'm saying this because Christmas was super magical for me growing up. Now, I used to love to go to my grandma's. I used to love to go to both grandparents, but I noticed it was kind of stressful for my mom sometimes, because when we would go to my grandma's, my dad was an alcoholic, and when we would go to his parents, there was a lot of drinking, and so, but I didn't see that. So as a kid, it's just all magical and wonderful, and you just feel it, and you're innocent and naive to it. But as an adult, when I had kids, I do remember some of the most stressful times in my life, like full-blown panic attacks, were when school started, because I'd walk into the stores and there'd be school supplies. And when you're buying school supplies for like 5 to 7 kids at a time, it's expensive. It would be thousands of dollars. And also too, Christmas, because when you're buying Christmas gifts for 7 kids, it's stressful. It's super stressful. And so sometimes Christmas can have a financial burden on a lot of people too. And so it makes it more stressful. And a lot of times too, I did have a friend growing up when we were, when younger mothers too, there was a poem called Funny Mother or something like that. And it was about how this mother started the Christmas season all happy and excited and doing the ribbons. And by the time it got to the end of the poem, mom was sitting in her chair, rocking, having an anxiety attack. And this gave my friend severe anxiety, because she's like, this is so true. This is so true sometimes about the Christmas, about Christmas or around Christmas time for mothers. And so that's kind of when I decided you look so hard when you have kids, but to look beyond that and to find the Christmas spirit. And Faith Hill has that one song, Where Are You Christmas? And that song will literally stop me in my tracks, and I can cry to that song sometimes, because I remember those Christmases when the Christmas spirit would be gone, because you're so into the financial part of it, and you're so into making sure everybody's happy, and the dinners and the wrapping and the trees, and it gets to the point where you dread decorating and things like that. So I'm hoping that this somehow will bring, to those of you who are going through this, or to those of you who have lost loved ones. I remember the first Christmas without my dad. We'll kind of talk about that too. It's hard. And so I'm hoping that this at least helps you find some sort of Christmas spirit, or Christmas that lets you know there is legitimately a Christmas spirit. And the reason why I think this too is because the collective is so strong, and energy is real, and we can create anything we want. That's what we're here for, is to learn how to create. So as a collective, when we all at one time are joyful and charitable and generous and kind, it creates this amount of this spirit of this beautiful spirit. And since we're kind of supposedly all joyful and charitable and generous and kind at the same time, and thinking of Christ, and we'll get into that a little bit too, that we create this beautiful, beautiful spirit called the Christmas spirit. And I believe that it's real. I believe that it's a real energy. It's a real spirit. And I believe that the symbolism of the spirit is Saint Nicholas, the Bishop of Myra. And I'll tell you kind of where he came from. It's always been kind of magical for me. So even in the Christmas Carol, when he's visited by the 3 spirits of Christmas, the Christmas of present is represented by this big, jovial, fun guy who is loving and beautiful and has food around him and feasts. And so that, to me, Christmas present that's kind of, I think, how people symbolic, or they have to have something tangible for this energy or for this spirit. Kind of like Archangel Michael, it's a protector. I feel like there is an angel, or there is a spirit that revolves around this time. And I think that is beautiful. And I think that it is symbolic of Saint Nick. I think Saint Nick is what brings that symbolism too. And then we added the Christmas tree and the reindeer and the sleigh and the shepherd's staff and all of those, which all have symbolic, beautiful meaning. The tree is the symbol of hope because the branches reach to the heavens. So I think that in the deep part of Christmas, when we look deeper into ourselves and into the Spirit, there's a strong spirit connection to Christmas, to Spirit rather than a spirit instead of just Santa. Now, many associate Christmas with the birth of Christ, which is totally fine. For a lot of growing up, I didn't. We weren't a religious family, but I always just knew there was something special about it. But the idea of Christmas actually predates Christianity. It goes clear back from the origins, really started with midwinter festivals around the time of winter solstice, clear back before Christ. So I thought that was kind of interesting too, because now a lot of people associate Christ with Christmas, the birth of Christ. When in reality, I think, I could be wrong. I think his birthday is actually in April, around April. So how that kind of came into play, I'm not really sure of that, because I just think that at the end of the day, the intentions of Christmas are supposed to be beautiful and uplifting and awesome. And so it doesn't really matter. I feel like if it belongs to the birth of Christ, that's amazing. But also too, as long as it brings peace and joy to people, I'm okay with wherever it comes from, even if it comes from just the winter solstice before Christ was even born. So there is the Bishop Nicholas, Saint Nicholas. He was the Bishop of Myra, and he on the coast of what was then called Asia Minor. There was a legend that he was imprisoned during this and he was persecuted, but then he was released under the Constantine the Great. But much about this man was uncertain. He may have never been imprisoned. They don't know a lot about this Saint Nicholas guy. He may never needed to be released. There is one tell about him that they kind of know, however, and this is how Saint Nicholas kind of got his image. That makes it our way of having been told over and over again. So the coming into the houses at night and leaving presents. It takes on the air of truth because so many believe it, as you can tell I'm reading right now. So it is this. Nicholas came to know a poor man with a large family. The man had 3 daughters, each of them personable, intelligent, and altogether companionable. But no man would marry any of the daughters because the father could not provide a dowry. This goes back to parents not being able to afford Christmas gifts for their children. The father grew saddened, the daughters despondent. Then one December night, Nicholas passed by the family's house. He threw 3 big bags of money through the open window around their shoes. And who does that sound like, right? And the stockings. Each of the girls now had a dowry, each of them married, and the legend of St. Nicholas as a secret gift giver was born. But not only was he a gift giver, he was one who helps the poor, one who understands, and as one who sees bright futures for the young and inspires them to always be on their best. After his death, Nicholas was credited with having performed many miracles. He was beatified and came to considered the patron saint of sailors, travelers, bakers, scholars, and merchants of all Russia, but most importantly, children. He became famous throughout the world, and by the Middle Ages, traditions were sprung up all over associated with him. His feast day was celebrated on December 6th. In many European countries, this became a day of celebration and gift giving. So this is the origins of where Christmas came from and St. Nicholas came from. And I think that they brought that through because that has all of the qualities of Christ, right? Christ was one who loved the poor, one who inspired others, one who performed miracles. And so I can't help believe, and then they put this saint and this tradition on Christ's birthday. So it kind of all mixes. But here I think this saint kind of still lives his spirit through him, like the Christmas spirit through him. And I think that that's kind of an amazing thing. So I don't really necessarily think that Santa is real. I think that Christmas spirit is real, which could be the Saint Nicholas character, like living through spiritually, or it just could be something we created as a collective, just all together as a collective. So I also have this book and grew up with this book called Flight of the Reindeer, which I love, which that Saint Nicholas story came from. And I have loved this book. I got this book when the kids were younger. It's called The Flight of the Reindeer, The True Story of Santa Claus and His Christmas Mission. And it's by, Robert Sullivan. So the people who have written it, Robert Sullivan is a senior editor with Life magazine and has written on natural history, Santology, Arctic topics, and for a variety of magazines. And Glenn Wolfe is nature drawings for New York Times and has graced several books, including It's Raining Frogs and Fishes. Yep. And so this book was written, and it's mostly talks about why Christmas is true. And it shows the scientific facts of why a Santa Claus can exist and that he does live in the North Pole. It talks about how they've taken a trip to the North Pole, and the North Pole, and you've probably heard this too, the North Pole shows up sometimes and then it just disappears all of a sudden. People have had experiences where they've explored the North Pole and they have actually been in the North Pole in Santa's workshop, and then they leave and it's gone. It's completely gone. And a lot of people say that this is hallucinations, which is totally fine. It could be, but still, that's still an amazing thing to have an hallucination like that. They also talk about hieroglyphics. So on a reindeer on a rock wall in southern France, painted by an artist sometime between 12,000 and 30,000 years ago, clearly shows the animal in that attitude of liftoff. So they also talk about and find pictures where they've seen reindeer actually flying. And there's a picture in here that they found Gilbert found a photograph buried in the U.S. Agriculture Department files. He wondered why no one had ever seen it before. And in this picture is a herd of reindeers, and in the background you can see reindeer lifting off. And this book goes over how it is possible for reindeer to fly, because let's be honest, it shouldn't be possible for a bumblebee to fly, right? But they do. And so they talk about what kind of reindeer does fly and can fly. And I think that this is the coolest thing ever. I get this book out. My kids love this book. In fact, my daughter actually ordered it too, because she loved it growing up. And they talk about how Santa can travel, and they talk about the scientific part of that part. And they talk about a man, and so Santa, it's so crazy, it's so fun. But they say that Santa puts different stashes of a new suit and food around different parts of the world, and how he stops at those places and makes a pit stop really fast and gets these things, and it helps him on his flight. So there's also one man who was on, I think, Everest. Let's see. Gillette made his way over to Hillary, and they were on the summit of Mount Everest, and they found a box full of this magical candy or this magical food. And it said on it, it had a picture of Santa's sleigh with the reindeer, and he put it back. He didn't get it out. Now, is all this fabricated? I don't know. At this point, I don't think so. He has done extensive work with a Santaology. And so I just thought it was kind of cool. I thought it was kind of magical and cool, and something that could be, it's one of those things, could it be possible? Who knows? Now, is there a man who goes to every house on Christmas Eve? No, obviously not. But there can be a spirit or something similar that does go to people who need it the most that night, or people, and I'm not going to say like who needs it the most, no one's, but just people who need it, you know. And I just think there's something loving and magical about that. And then they have in this book a chart of evidence, like there was a Santa mitten found in the Sahara Desert, 1933, reportedly. Just different things in Egypt, 1941. There was the hieroglyphics of another reindeer discovered in the tombs. Just different things. Now, one of my favorite things, too, is, I'm going to tell you a couple stories, that the airports or they stop all of the flights around Christmas Eve so that they can, it's called the Santa Claus, where the president signs a clause saying that it's okay to land all of the aircrafts so Santa can have the skies. So it's called so everyone clears the air over the pole for 31 hours. And this is not just a US thing. This is Airloft cooperates and China Air cooperates, Qantas cooperates, and Air France cooperates. This annual moratorium stands really as a testament to the kind of man Santa is. Former President of the United States, George Bush, confirms and concurs. It's just as Orrin says. We do it because of who Santa is, what he does, and what he stands for, says Bush, speaking from his office in Houston. I didn't know one blessed thing about this before I came to the White House. Then during my first term as president, probably about October of 1989, I was presented with this long-standing agreement that all presidents sign off each year. This was an international accord that directs our airlines to watch themselves and to clear the airspace up there over the pole. I didn't think for a minute, not for a minute. I looked at the thing and I said, for Santa Claus, sure. I signed immediately. He's a great ambassador for peace and fellowship in the world. America absolutely should be in the business of encouraging his work. I told Bill Clinton that signing the Santa Claus was just about the nicest thing he'd get to do each year. And I think that that's true. I think that Santa Claus is an ambassador for peace and fellowship. I'm also going to tell you another story about a veterinarian who thinks that she actually she had an experience with a reindeer. So, okay, the call is made and Dr. Reagan of Harvard tells the tale. Well, how it came about was Bob asked if I'd ever worked with reindeer. I laughed and said we didn't have a lot of reindeer in Greater Philadelphia. He said, well, you might have one tomorrow. When I awoke, there was a Perry caribou in my backyard. So in the book, it says that the Perry caribou are the type that can fly, and they're the type of Santa's reindeer. It was holding its left foreleg off the ground. I hadn't the foggiest idea of how it had gotten there. It was like the unicorn in the garden story. I went out and found that there was a note attached to its antlers. I've saved the note, of course. I'll read it to you. It says, Dear Dr. Reagan, my name is Donner, and it seems I have hurt my leg while running. The vets where I come from are very capable, but they work mostly with herbal medicines, and my handler says he believes surgery is needed. Time is of the essence. Could you help me? It is important to me and to the others that this injury be treated properly. And so my trainer has sent me to you, as you come very highly recommended. I would appreciate it if you could help me, and so would my owner. That's the whole note. No signature, no hoof print. So anyway, I went to work on the leg. I ultrasounded it. I found that the injury wasn't as serious as the trainer had feared. Trainers have been known to overreact. The Perry had tendinitis, and this responded to anti-inflammatory medication and a bit of rest. I waited for the owner to call or to come over and pick up, pick up his reindeer. No one ever did. That's it. End of story. Somehow this deer named Donner got out of the backyard pen, and I never saw him again. Reagan pauses and smiles. There is a postscript, she says. I think that perhaps September, maybe October, when I treated Donner, I waited patiently through November, but I never got any payment. No check in the mail, no token of thanks, not even a letter or a card of acknowledgement. And then on Christmas morning, I came downstairs, and under my tree was a little stuffed reindeer, and it had a splint on its foreleg. Out in the backyard was an ice sculpture that looked just like Donner. And so how do you suppose that happened? Now, this could be anything, any trainer besides Santa. But again, this is part of the Christmas spirit. It's part of the spirit that is magical, that helps us wonder, that keeps us, unconditional love, that puts us in this kindness for everybody. So I'm going to tell you a couple Christmas stories that kind of have this fun. Some of them are fun. Some of them are, but they're my own. They're my own Christmas stories. I tried to Google some Christmas stories. The only ones I could come up with are with the same ones from The Guardian that the psychic teachers used. They do a great podcast on Christmas angels that I love, and this is actually that podcast is what got me to think, is it more than just angels? Is it more than just angels and Santa and reindeer? Is there actually a Christmas spirit? Not like in general of the Christmas energy being beautiful, but a spirit like an archangel. And I just thought that was an awesome concept. And I kind of just believe it. I have since I was little, that there's this spirit around Christmas that's just beautiful. So, honestly, we checked for the book, The Flight of the Reindeer. I think it is hard to come by. It's kind of an older book. So, but if you could possibly get your hands on one of those, that would be, I think you would love it. It has lots of different things that talk about why Santa is real and what kind of sleigh he uses and how it aerodynamically works and what kind of, what the North Pole is like and who's actually seen it. And it's just kind of a magical thing. It's just, I highly recommend it. So now the Christmas stories, I'm going to start with, I had an uncle. His name was Les. He's pretty awesome. He reminded me of my dad. We lost him 2 years ago. Now, when I was little, he would always play Santa. And none of us would ever figure out it was him. And I don't know how we didn't, but we didn't until we got older and grew up. But my grandma was an amazing seamstress, and she made dresses, and she made a beautiful Santa suit, and Les wore it. And it got to be the point where all of us were growing up, and we were kind of, all of my grandma and grandpa's children were having kids of their own. And by the time we were in high school and moving on, they would still do this every year. My grandma had this amazing Christmas, but it started to get to, my grandma was getting too old, and she couldn't put the work into it anymore. And so everyone kind of started doing their own thing with their own families. But my Uncle Les always had his beautiful Christmas Santa suit that he wore, and he was known as the Santa around town, and people would hire him all the time, and he would never accept the money. So even for where I worked, I hired him as the Santa at where I worked for one of the Christmas events, and he did an amazing job, and he wouldn't accept any money because he loved the kids. He had a sweet spirit about him. He had 3 children of his own. They were his stepchildren, but he considered them his children, and he loved his grandchildren. Like you would never know he didn't know what the word step meant. He just was an amazing, loving man, and he was always fun and happy and just the epitome of what Santa is. He was also an artist, and he painted me a picture of Santa Claus. He painted quite a few of them, and they're in our family, and they're Santa Claus. His picture of Santa is always a huge painting hanging right in front of my door as you walk in my house. And it just brings the essence of him and the Christmas spirit. And he just was the epitome of Christmas spirit. And he, one year, there's a funny story and then there's a cool story. One year he went and he was playing Santa, and this little girl came up on sat up on his knee and asked for a bike. And I think for some reason he was at their house, and he had shown up. So he had done that. People had asked him to just show up on Christmas Eve or show up when they were having Christmas parties at people's houses. And he showed up, and because he didn't want money, he would do this a lot, and especially for people who didn't have a lot of money. And this little girl sat on his knee, and he said, "What do you want for Christmas?" And she said, "I want a bike." And he could see in the mom's, I'm going to have a hard time telling this story. He could see in the mom's eyes that this wasn't going to happen. And she said, "Tell Santa other things you want, because, Santa can't always bring everything we want." My Uncle Les could tell that she wasn't going to get this bike for Christmas. And this little girl was adamant. She was like, "I know, I believe in Santa. I know he's going to bring me this bike." And so my Uncle Les knew then that he had to somehow get this little girl a bike. And he didn't have very much time. I think it was maybe Christmas Eve the next day, he went to Bill's bike shop in Idaho Falls, and they were like sold out, of all these. And he kind of told the owner, I think, of what was going on. He's like, "Well, let me check in the back." And he went back, and this girl, I think she had detailed what she wanted the bike to look like, which was crazy. Like, it was supposed to be pink and have a basket and have a little horn. And he took it, the owner of the bike shop took my uncle back, and they did find this bike, and it had to be fixed up. It wasn't in the best of shape, but my uncle was like, I'll take it, and I'll go look and he went, because the bike shop was sold out of the horns, the little beeper horns and the basket. So then my uncle went all over town looking for these little baskets that go on this bike, and tires to fix it. And he just went on this hunt all Christmas Eve to find stuff for this bike. And it was so crazy. He was telling me how everything just kind of magically appeared. Like the bike kind of magically appeared. And then when he was looking for the basket, he had mentioned it to somebody else, and they're like, "You know what? I think I saw that here." And then he went to that store, and there was one left. And then the hardest thing was finding the horn, like the little horn. He couldn't find one anywhere. And I think he actually had one. I think one of my aunts was searching for him too, and they found one at a thrift store that had to been open that day. It was magical how he had told the story of how he just found everything. Like, it was almost when he first started looking for this stuff for this bike, he thought it was going to be impossible. And then by the end of the day, how people had donated things, or donated the basket, or donated the tires. And by the end of the day, there was this magical bike that this girl had asked for, down to the details of what she had asked for. And he got in his Santa suit, and he went to their house, and he left it on their door, and knocked on the door, and ran away. And not ran away, but watched the little girl open the door, and he saw the joy on this little girl's face, and on the mother, and the anxiety that the mother had release. And it was just an amazing story when he told it. And the things that I love about this is, one, that was completely Christmas spirited. Like, you can't tell me if it was ancestors, or if my dad on the other side was helping, or that's the Christmas spirit. That's the thing that we're searching for at Christmas time. And sometimes we aren't able to be the Santa that my uncle was, and to be able to do that. And sometimes we have to be the receiver, and that's okay, because there's a time and a season for everything. And sometimes we're the receiver, and sometimes we are the giver. There was one Christmas when I was going through a pretty brutal divorce, and we didn't really, have a lot of money. And I just remember one night going to bed wondering, okay, I don't know really, how I'm going to get my kids Christmas, and what I'm going to do. And the next morning I woke up, and there were groceries all over my porch. And also there were gift certificates for more groceries, and gift certificates to buy my kids Christmas. So, and now I'm at the point where I can be the giver. And so it's just kind of this pendulum thing that we play, right? And I you have to be grateful for the both parts of it, the giving and the receiving. Now, the next story is kind of funny with my Uncle Les, because it's more fun, and I just wanted to tell it because he would tell the story and laugh, and I love him so much, and I miss him. Sorry, I keep losing my voice. So, as I said, he dressed up as Santa every year, and he was on his way to a house, and excuse my language, there's going to be a swear word in here, so just, if there's little kids, turn it down. And actually, if there's little kids, like, I should have said this before, if you're around kids, there's going to be spoilers about Santa in this. So, he accidentally went to the wrong house, and he didn't know it, and he knocked on the door, and he was fully in his Santa suit, and he knocked on the door, and this little boy answered, and his eyes, the little boy's eyes just got so wide, and he was like amazed that Santa was standing in front of him at his door. And in the background, the mom said the little boy's name, and he said, "Who's at the door?" And the boy sat there for a second, and he couldn't talk. He was like dumbfounded, and all of a sudden he said, "Holy shit, Mom, it's Santa Claus." I'm sorry. I love this story. I love it, because it's just such an innocent, like, it's so innocent. The children's innocence are just, it's amazing, and I love that at Christmas time too. Now, I know lots of people struggle with lost loved ones on Christmas, so I'm going to tell you a story about the first Christmas when we lost my dad. And as I've already said, my birthday is around Christmas time, and this was a time that I had my kids really, really close together, and I was pregnant every other year. So I think I had a child in 92, 94, 96, and 98. And my father died in 99. So I'd had all 4 kids. I was tired. My husband then, at that time, he worked all the time. He was hardly ever home. And I just remember being exhausted. And those were one of the Christmases that poem, The Funny Mother, would have destroyed me, because it was what I was going through. There wasn't a lot of money to buy all the 4 kids at the time, presents. And I, just being a stay-at-home mom with 4 kids was hard. It was hard. And I was tired. And so we had just put up the Christmas tree. And it was one of those times when back then you didn't have a Christmas tree that already was pre-lit. You had to put the lights on. And I had plugged in the lights or I didn't plug in the lights. I can't remember. And I had strung the whole tree and with the lights. And it took me, we had one of those trees that you had to put each of the branches in one at a time. And 4 little kids running around, putting up the tree. And I think it was like December 13th. And usually it was December 13th because my birthday was December 14th. And usually I put up the tree way sooner than that, but I had been kind of tired this year and kind of sad and just, anyways. So I put up the tree, I strung the lights, and I plugged the lights in. And the whole middle section of the tree didn't work. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I had put the tree up. I had put the lights on, and I thought that I had plugged them in, and they worked. And I must not have, but when I got them on the tree, and then I decorated the whole tree, everything was done, and I plugged the Christmas tree in, and it didn't work. There was a section of lights in the middle that didn't work. And I remember sitting that night when I had finished everything and put the kids to bed, and I remember sitting there crying because I did not have the energy to take all of the ornaments off or go buy new lights and add them on. The thought of redoing the tree overwhelmed me. And so I sat in front of the tree and I cried. And I said to my dad, if you want to give me anything for my Christmas present or for my birthday, please just make the lights work. And so I unplugged the Christmas tree and I went to bed. And I woke up the next morning not thinking anything of it, just kind of doing the things. And one of the kids plugged the Christmas tree in and they shouted, "Mom, how did you get all the lights to work?" And I sat for a second and I went to the front to where the Christmas tree was. And all the lights were working on the tree. And to me, that is the Christmas spirit. That is the beautiful, magical part of Christmas. And is every Christmas like that? Nope. And sometimes we lose that spirit, or sometimes we lose that luster, and we think about how we're going to buy food or presents for our kids. And I just know, and sometimes we're lonely and sometimes we're sad. But deep, deep in the heart of Christmas, there is a spirit of Christmas. There is a Christmas spirit that is hard to explain. And if you look for it, I know you can find it. And so maybe not this year, especially if you've lost a loved one recently, and it may be, not in a couple years. But I fully believe that your ancestors or the spirit of Christmas will find you if you look hard enough. And I don't want to say that too, because I don't want to make you think you're doing anything wrong, that you're not looking hard enough. But I promise you, it will find you when you least expect it. And it will be there. And your ancestors and angels and the Christmas spirit and Saint Nicholas, all of them are with you. You're not alone at this time of year, even though it sometimes can feel like that. So I hope that this podcast seems kind of sporadic, like we're talking about Santa, Saint Nicholas, but just know that's my personality. I try and organize it as much as I can, but I am a little ADD, and I can go off on tangents, and sometimes it can seem sporadic, but that's just who I am. And so I hope at the end of the day, though, that the Christmas spirit finds you. I hope that this helps you. I hope that this helps you find the Christmas spirit this year. And mostly, I just want you to know that I love you. I really sincerely do. And I'm not just saying that. I just really feel this unconditional love for whoever's listening out there and whoever needs this. And I feel so grateful for you. And I know that what I do couldn't happen without you. And I know that my main job is to honor and be there for the spirits that need to come through and talk to their families. But I also know that I am grateful for you. And I'm grateful that your ancestors and your past loved ones find you and bring you to me. And I hope with everything that I have that I can bring their messages to you to give you healing. And I know that Christmas time can be hard, but it can be healing. And I hope that you find the magic in Christmas this year. I hope that you find it, or you find Christmas spirit, or you feel some of it a little bit, and get out of the chaos and the day-to-day commercialization of it. And just know that there is a Christmas spirit, and it is around, and it is unconditionally and loving, and it is generous and kind. And I hope that you have even though it's kind of 2 weeks away, I hope you have a very, 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 very Merry Christmas this year. And I will see you guys next time.